The 20th century was not just a period of wars, revolutions, and ideologies. It was a time when powerful leaders rose to command nations, shift borders, and alter the fate of millions. From the iron grip of Stalin and Hitler's terrifying vision, to the military regimes of Pinochet and Suharto, from monarchs turned autocrats to revolutionaries turned dictators. These men ruled not just with authority, but with force, fear, and a firm belief in their mission. Some were hailed as heroes, others condemned as tyrants. But one thing is certain, each of them left a mark that reshaped the course of world history. In this video, we dive into the lives and legacies of the 20th century's most powerful and controversial rulers, and how their reigns changed the shape of the world.
We will climb. The dust will settle. We will not. All together we will rise. We will climb.
In the shadow of history, the period between 1976 and 1981 in Argentina remains marked by fear, oppression, and the haunting echoes of a military dictatorship under Jorge Rafael Videla. His ascent to power was not a gradual climb but a sudden coup d'état, orchestrated to dismantle the existing democratic framework led by President Isabel Perón. As the military took control, a wave of uncertainty swept across the nation, with the populace caught in a struggle for survival amidst escalating violence. The operation known as the Dirty War became the regime's haunting legacy, a chilling campaign that transformed the streets into clandestine battlegrounds. The government's relentless pursuit of perceived enemies led to the forced disappearance of thousands. Families were shattered, whispers of fear replaced laughter in homes, and the cries of those unjustly imprisoned filled the silence left in the wake of state terror. Each disappearance marked a haunting reminder of the cost of dissent in Videla's Argentina, where the boundaries of human rights were redefined in blood and fear. Democracy crumbled as the junta established a regime devoid of civil liberties. The legislature was dissolved, political parties banned, and dissent silenced through censorship of the press, a grim landscape where fear controlled voices. Citizens found themselves navigating a landscape where loyalty to the regime often overshadowed justice and truth. Yet, amidst the oppression, the resilient spirit of the Argentinian people flickered. Clandestine meetings and underground movements emerged, subtly challenging the regime's claims to power. Economically, Videla's government turned to neoliberal reforms, pursuing strategies that stripped state involvement and promoted free market ideologies. However, the aftermath was a society marked by rising poverty and disparity, as wealth became increasingly concentrated in the hands of the few. This period of exploitation and inequality sowed the seeds of discontent, creating a complex social fabric that continued to unravel long after the dictatorship's fall. Despite the initial international support for his regime, the tides of global perception shifted as human rights organizations scrutinized the heinous acts of violence committed by Videla's government. By the time the country returned to democracy in the early 1980s, the legacy of terror and brutal human rights violations cast a long shadow over Argentina's history. Justice had to wait, but the resilience of the Argentinian people paved the way for truth and reconciliation and kept the memory of the disappeared alive, refusing to let the haunting silence envelop their stories.
Kim Il-sung, the founding leader of North Korea. From 1948 to 1994, he ruled with absolute power, shaping a nation and a legacy that still haunts global politics today. Born in 1912, Kim Il-sung grew up during Japan's brutal occupation of Korea. He joined communist guerrillas in Manchuria, later aligning with the Soviet Union during World War II. After Japan's defeat in 1945, Korea was divided, north and south, setting the stage for Kim's rise. Backed by Moscow, Kim became premier of the newly formed Democratic People's Republic of Korea in 1948. In 1950, Kim launched an invasion of the South, triggering the Korean War. The brutal conflict drew in the United States and China and left millions dead. After 3 years, a ceasefire was declared, but not peace. The Korean peninsula remains divided to this day. Kim built a cult of personality unlike any other. He was hailed as the great leader, portrayed as a near-divine figure. Through propaganda, purges, and isolation, he turned North Korea into a rigid, totalitarian state. Dissent was crushed. Loyalty was everything. By the 1990s, North Korea was crumbling. The Soviet Union was gone, the economy collapsed, and famine loomed. In 1994, Kim Il-sung died, but not before ensuring power stayed in the family. His son, Kim Jong-il, succeeded him, marking the world's first communist dynasty. Kim Il-sung's shadow still looms over North Korea. His legacy lives on, not just in monuments or textbooks, but in a nation frozen in time, shaped by one man's vision and his iron will. He was a fiery orator, a visionary leader, and the founding father of Indonesia. From leading a revolution to standing tall against global superpowers, Sukarno's journey is one of passion, politics, and power. This is the story of Indonesia's first president, Sukarno, and his rule from 1945 to 1967. Sukarno was born in 1901 in Java, then part of the Dutch East Indies. A brilliant student and a skilled speaker, he quickly became a leading voice in the push for independence. In 1927, he co-founded the Indonesian National Party, PNI, which aimed to free Indonesia from Dutch colonial rule. For this, he was arrested and imprisoned several times. But prison couldn't silence him. His words continued to ignite the spirit of revolution. World War II changed everything. The Japanese occupied Indonesia from 1942 to 1945. When Japan surrendered, Sukarno seized the moment. On August 17, 1945, alongside Muhammad Hatta, he declared Indonesia's independence. It was a bold move, one that sparked a 4-year war against the Dutch, who tried to retake control. From 1945 to 1949, Sukarno led the diplomatic and military struggle against Dutch attempts to return. With international pressure mounting, the Dutch finally recognized Indonesia's independence in 1949. Sukarno became the first president of the Republic of Indonesia. But building a nation from scratch was no easy task. By the mid-1950s, Indonesia faced political instability. There were too many parties, regional rebellions, and economic chaos. In 1959, Sukarno dissolved the parliament and introduced a system he called guided democracy. It gave him sweeping powers to rule by decree. He became not just president, but almost like a king. He promoted nationalism, religion, and communism, calling it Nasakom, trying to unite the country's diverse ideologies. But beneath the surface, tension was rising. On the world stage, Sukarno was a charismatic and defiant leader. He helped launch the non-aligned movement, aligning Indonesia with neither the US nor the USSR during the Cold War. He hosted the Bandung Conference in 1955, bringing together newly independent Asian and African nations. Sukarno's message was clear. We are no longer colonies. We are equals. But by 1965, Indonesia was a powder keg. On September 30th, a group calling itself the 30 September Movement kidnapped and murdered 6 army generals. A failed coup? Or something deeper? General Suharto led a counterattack. Blaming the Indonesian Communist Party, PKI, a bloody purge followed, hundreds of thousands killed. Sukarno lost control. Though he remained president for a while, real power shifted to Suharto. In 1967, Sukarno was officially removed from power. Sukarno spent his final years under house arrest, dying in 1970. But his legacy lives on. He gave Indonesia its independence. He gave it a voice on the world stage. And despite his flaws, authoritarianism, economic mismanagement, political chaos, he remains a symbol of national pride. The man who dared to dream of a free Indonesia and made it real. From a military general to one of the longest-serving leaders in Asia, this is the story of Suharto, the man who shaped modern Indonesia for over 3 decades. Suharto was born in 1921 in central Java, in Dutch-controlled Indonesia. His early life was modest, but he joined the Royal Netherlands East Indies Army, and later, during the Japanese occupation, became involved in nationalist military forces. After Indonesia's independence, Suharto quickly rose through the ranks of the army. By the 1960s, he was a major general, playing a crucial role in suppressing rebellions and maintaining order. In 1965, a failed coup attempt blamed on the Indonesian Communist Party plunged the country into chaos. Suharto stepped in, claiming emergency powers. What followed was one of the darkest chapters in Indonesian history, a brutal anti-communist purge that left an estimated 500,000 to 1 million people dead. In 1967, Suharto officially replaced Sukarno and became the second president of Indonesia. Suharto ushered in what he called the New Order, a regime focused on political stability, economic development, and strong central control. Under his rule, Indonesia experienced significant economic growth, foreign investment increased, and poverty rates began to decline. However, this prosperity came with a price. Suharto's regime was authoritarian. Political opposition was suppressed, the media was censored, and corruption became deeply entrenched. His family and inner circle were accused of amassing vast personal fortunes. By the late 1990s, Indonesia was in crisis. The Asian financial meltdown of 1997 devastated the economy. Mass protests erupted across the country, calling for reform and Suharto's resignation. On May 21, 1998, after 32 years in power, Suharto stepped down. Suharto remains a deeply polarizing figure. Some remember him as the father of Indonesian development, a stabilizer and nation builder. Others view him as a dictator responsible for mass killings, human rights abuses, and corruption. Whether admired or condemned, Suharto left an undeniable mark on Indonesia's modern history. Suharto's rule is a reminder of the complex balance between order and freedom, progress and power. Indonesia's journey continues, shaped but not defined by its past. Augusto Pinochet, a name that evokes controversy, power, and a legacy of dictatorship in Chile. From a military coup to a 17-year rule, Pinochet's era changed the nation forever. Let's explore how he rose to power, ruled with an iron fist, and left behind a deeply divided legacy. Pinochet was born in 1915 in Valparaiso, Chile. A career military officer, he rose steadily through the ranks. In 1973, as Commander-in-Chief of the Army, he led a violent military coup that overthrew President Salvador Allende, the world's first democratically elected Marxist leader. The coup marked the end of Chilean democracy for nearly 2 decades. After the coup, Pinochet established a military junta and soon declared himself president. His regime was marked by extreme repression. Thousands of political opponents were arrested, tortured, or disappeared. Human rights groups estimate over 3,000 people were killed and tens of thousands were detained. At the same time, Pinochet implemented sweeping economic reforms with the help of the Chicago Boys, a group of neoliberal economists. These policies privatized state industries, opened up markets, and brought economic growth, but also widened inequality and poverty for many. In 1988, Pinochet lost a national referendum, a vote he organized believing he would win. Under pressure, he stepped down in 1990, restoring civilian government. However, he remained army commander until 1998 and later became a senator for life, enjoying legal immunity. In his later years, he faced numerous legal battles for human rights violations and corruption, but he died in 2006 without ever being convicted. To some, Pinochet saved Chile from communism and modernized its economy. To others, he was a brutal dictator responsible for grave human rights abuses. His name still sparks fierce debate, a reminder of how power, fear, and ideology can shape a nation's destiny.